welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Hey, welcome back to another episode here, Real Estate Mogul MD. And today we're talking with a pediatric anesthesiologist and real estate investor who got started in real estate during residency. Now, having done deals in different niches, she focuses primarily on short-term rentals, not just short-term rentals, but luxury short-term rentals. This would be a very interesting conversation today. She's the founder of SavvyDocs in real estate. Everybody, please welcome Dr. Chiagozie Fawole.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, I did the practice of the name. That one, I love that you sent over the pronunciation of that, and hopefully I did it some justice. So everybody knows that. Yes, I just love being able to say everybody's name the way that they say it. And I often joke around and say, okay, how does your mom say it? Or how does your dad say it? I want to say it like that, right? But no, welcome to this show. And we're just excited to jump into this conversation and learn more about your path.
I'm really excited as well. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So first of all, pediatric anesthesiology, that's very, very, niche down in the medicine itself. So how did that come about? Tell us a little bit about your medical journey, where you started and where you're at now.
Yeah. So I got started actually thinking that I wanted to go into pediatrics. Like I went to med school thinking, I want to take care of kids. And I remember then I had a mentor friend who was a couple of years ahead of me at the time. And she always told me like, no, you don't want to go into peds. And I was like, no, why? I mean, I love the babies, right?
Yeah.
So I decided, well, since I've been told that I don't want to go into peds, well, let me find something else. And I thought, what is out there? Well, I went to Johns Hopkins and you had Ben Carson there who had the nice, star power around him, So I was like, well, he's written a bunch of interesting books that have inspired me on my journey. So how about neurosurgery?
Yeah.
And so neurosurgery became my pursuit. I was everything neurosurgery. I did a sub-I in neurosurgery. I did away rotations in neurosurgery. I knew it was tough to get into neurosurgery, but I thought, I mean, that's what we've done our whole lives, right? Find the most complicated thing and then top it. So long story short, I did not match in neurosurgery, and that ended up becoming one of the blessings in my life, because the day that I found out that I didn't match, I picked up the sheet because I was called into my dean's office for the SOAP. It was the first year of the SOAP, dating myself. And I took that sheet and I saw all the open spots, all the open residency spots. And thankfully it was arranged in alphabetical order. So anesthesiology was right there on top. And I was like, I didn't think about that. Like, I get to be in the OR. I get to still wear my stethoscope. And that's a whole different story because they laughed at me during my neurosurgery rotation because I still had a stethoscope on.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I get to be in the OR. I get to still wear my stethoscope and read EKGs. I get to actually take care of patients. No shade to surgeons, but I just felt in that moment that I got to still do medicine.
Mm-hmm. And
so I applied for anesthesia and, redid my personal statement in 2 hours, got my first, phone interview in a couple of days. And here we are now, anesthesiology. Never looking back.
So very interesting story. I like that a lot. I like, my favorite piece is wanting to wear the stethoscope. So that's very interesting. So from the outside looking in, I'm not a physician. Okay. And when you said, doesn't match or I didn't match, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. So in the process, the way we go from medical school into residency is that basically you apply to a bunch of places, and if they like you, they put you on a list. Now, after you've gone to a bunch of places, you also create your own list of the places that you liked in the order that you would like to go if they accepted you. It's basically a way of putting people into what would have otherwise been limited slots in a somewhat organized way. Mm-hmm. And so basically what they do is that I think they prefer the applicants' rank list, but, you know, imagine having to put people into slots where you have over thousands of people applying for the same number of spots. So if you're ranked number 1 at an institution and you have not matched, you know, you get that slot if that slot is also one of your highest ranked places. So it's a whole thing. And if somehow they get to the end of all the rankings and all the hospitals' slots are filled and you haven't gotten a spot in any of your desired places, then you basically don't have a job for your residency. So that's basically what it means. But we all find out about that during, like, it's like one day of the year, you find out if you matched or not. And it's a whole event. And then the Friday of that week, you find out where you matched. So there's like a 4-day window between if you matched or not to this is where you actually matched. So like that Monday, everyone is just like kind of, you know, pent up anxiety. Like, did I match or not? Okay, I matched. Whew, now I can breathe, right? But in my case, I had applied to neurosurgery, which is very competitive, and they have very limited spots, right? But it's also one of those specialties that, like, you know, if you do match and you do get in, pays very well. You know, it has all that, you know, prestige associated with it, but it's also a lot of work. Okay. It's 7 years of residency. And when you're done, you may or may not see your kids at home. So for me, it turned out to like actually have been a blessing, because right at that point, my other life interests began to sort of pop up. And I don't think I'd have been able to do the things that I'm doing right now had I gotten into neurosurgery. Just personally speaking, not saying anything about the entire specialty or anything, just for myself, knowing, you know, knowing all that I know now.
Yeah, and absolutely. Everybody has their own journey, their own path. And then we have this beautiful thing of the choice of free will that kind of like swings and sways us through this path. But very interesting. I think I said this just not too many episodes ago, that some of our greatest blessings, some of my greatest blessings in life have been the things that I didn't get. Yeah. And it sounds like right at this moment is when this all this aligns for you and you find these other interests. And then you do get matched and you're into the anesthesiology and kind of find your way into the peds. Now, somehow at this point, this is right when real estate starts for you, right? So tell us a little bit about your first real estate experience in residency.
So I was home. My husband was out of town and I was watching TV, watching Flip or Flop on HGTV to be specific. And I'm sitting there watching Tarek and Christina generate $60,000 from one deal. It was a flip that they did. And I was like, wait a minute. At the time, my salary was about $54,000 a year as a resident. And I'm like, wait, these guys just made my entire annual salary in one deal. What am I doing? Okay. And I said, I don't know what they're doing, but I need to go find out what they're doing because I need to be in there. And that basically took me down what became a rabbit hole, a good rabbit hole. I discovered Bigger Pockets. I discovered all these other, online education platforms, and ultimately so that was in 2014. I ended up doing my very first deal at the beginning of 2016. And it turned out to have been a rehab deal all the way down in Norfolk, Virginia, me being in Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first deal. It was a foreclosure property, single family home. I didn't have any money at the time, but I was able to partner with my dad on that deal. That was how I was able to get that off the ground. And he was my boots on the ground person. So I basically did all the deal structuring things of, finding the hard money lenders, finding the contractors, finding anything that I could do on the phone. I did on the phone. And he was like, he went down to the property. He met with people and things like that. And that was our first deal.
Interesting. And then, so you're in Brooklyn. This deal is in Virginia. Was your family from Virginia, or what was the link to Virginia?
Yeah. So my family lived in Chesapeake, Virginia at the time, which was why so when I checked, I think it was like a Bank of America website. I don't even know if they still have it now, but they had like a bunch of foreclosures on their website. And I was just checking and I saw one from Norfolk and I was like, oh, okay, well, at least we have people there. And that was how we got that off the ground.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So finding that foreclosure, and this was 16. So it was a little while after that big fold of what happened in the banking scenario. So interesting. Mm-hmm. You found this foreclosure. It sounds like you leveraged private money, family private money to get this thing off the ground. And then on that particular deal, did you use hard money to get the family money back out, or did you use hard money on top of what you had borrowed?
Yeah, so I used family money as the down payment on the hard money. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So
absolutely.
The funny thing is it was 100%, so 100% purchase, 100% rehab type loan, but with all their fees and everything, I literally didn't have money for any of that. Yeah. So I used family money for like all those fees and stuff.
And that's a blessing in itself when you have the opportunity that's close to where you can leverage private money and you have someone who believes in you and gives you has faith in you to get this done. It's such a blessing.
It is.
And for all the listeners out there who may not have that same opportunity, I would just encourage them to think as though they did. So it may not be a father or a family member, but you're always surrounded by opportunities. You're always surrounded by people. So you've got that same opportunity, just may not look like other people's opportunity.
That is true. That's very true.
In this path, you've got to fix and flip, and we're coming off the Turk, right? Turk and what's his wife's name?
Turk and Christina.
Yeah, and Christina, the Flipper Flop show. And you've got this passion, you're moving forward, you got the deal, foreclosure, you got the money, you're rehabbing, you're building these relationships with the builders, everything's happening. Tell us a little about how that deal turned out. Do you remember the numbers on it?
Oh, I remember the numbers very well.
Yes.
Because what I tell people is it became tuition. Okay.
Oh, nice. Tell us a little bit about it.
It became tuition because it was not profitable. Okay. That particular deal ended up costing us $10,000. So we were $10,000 in the red by the time we were done. And the whole experience made me realize, well, maybe flipping homes may not be my place just yet, just because of how quickly deals can turn from profit to a loss for even just, operational issues, right? Mm-hmm. In my case, it was that we didn't stage it right out of the gate. Okay. And so trying to save money on the staging, and we had gone a little over on our rehab costs. And so it was like, well, we don't want to stage. And then we didn't stage. And then it's kind of sat on the market for a little while. And then, fees and all. Long story short, that ended up not being like we wanted. But what it did for me though was in the middle of all of that, I was like, well, I should probably find something that's a little more safe, a little safer, right? And that ended up taking me to find a 12-unit apartment complex.
Oh, wow.
All the way up in Rochester. Because at the time, again, being on the different forums and things, I had seen that, well, multifamily was quote unquote safer. So I found a 12-unit apartment complex. I still didn't have the money. And I got a number of people to invest with me. We ended up closing on that deal. And as God will have it, my training took me then to Rochester, New York for my fellowship. So we closed on that 12-unit as well as our first personal home on the same day as we moved to Rochester. I had a property manager on that deal. We held that for 4 years. Sold it in 2020, so right like middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we successfully exited profitably on that one. So
nice.
That was a better outcome.
What made you want to exit it?
So for that one, we had a fire incident actually, and after the fire, by the time the insurance money kicked in and we did like a huge renovation and all, the house looked almost brand new. I told them and I said, listen, guys, this is the time.
Right.
This is the time to sell this. Just cash into this was also in 2020 when we had no idea where things were going to go. I mean, you had all the property values had risen significantly.
Yeah.
And now we had a pandemic that kind of threw in all this uncertainty. So I was like, yeah, we've built in good equity in this. Just, I mean, in retrospect, it will probably sold for more now, but
yeah, you can learn what you can of the moment. Whatever
at the time, I was like,
the never ending changing story, Yeah, absolutely. So very interesting. So from that first flip or flop into which turned into tuition, and then I love how you put that, turned into tuition. And then we're looking at this 12 unit. And that was fellowship, right? So you're coming out, you're in Rochester. Where does that 12 unit then lead you?
Yeah. So now with the 12 unit, 12 unit began during fellowship. So I did my 1 year of fellowship. And then after I finished my fellowship, I moved to Syracuse for my attending job. So I became an attending. And when we got here, my husband and I were kind of like, well, we had people involved in that last deal. Let's just kind of see what we can do on our own, right? Because remember, we're technically newbies, all of this, but these are like huge jumps, at least mentally speaking. So at that point, we're like, you know what? Let's just pause for a minute, see what we can kind of do on our own. And so we started buying small multifamily properties, so like duplexes. And would use the buy the BRRRR strategy if you're familiar with real estate lingo, but that's basically where you buy, you renovate, you rent it, you refinance, and you repeat.
Yep,
you repeat
absolutely.
the process. So we did that on a number of duplexes, and just went through the whole motion of working with contractors and getting the money out and doing it again. And you basically use the same pile of cash across maybe like four, I think the last one of that initial pile of cash was like the fourth. And it was just nice and slow.
And this is in Syracuse.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it was while this was happening that I then decided, okay, well, I'll probably start helping other people get started with this, just, from a teaching standpoint, because I'll find myself on Facebook groups, with people bringing deals that they, sisters, brothers, families, aunts brought them, and were wondering if it was a good deal. And so I thought, this is something that's needed in our community. And that was how the whole SavvyDocs thing started. But over the next 4 years or so, that was basically what we did, just buying, rehabbing, slow deals. Yeah. I'm calling it slow deals. It didn't feel like slow deals at the time, but.
So, and then now interesting to see, like on that first project and where you're at now, obviously your associations have expanded, your knowledge has expanded.
Yeah.
The way that you're underwriting or running numbers has probably expanded. You probably have a way of doing that now. Where does that lead you now? I'm hearing like duplexes, and now we're talking about, the luxury short term. So when did you start looking at short term? Were any of these duplexes short term?
So it was no, actually they're all still long-term rentals, but it was when I started coaching real estate that I will have people come to me, and either in the DMs or on the phone, and they're like, I'm looking for something that can get me out of work right now. Like, I am burnt out. I am, toast. I'm done with this. And me at the time, I was fine with my job because I loved where I worked. Okay. So, but I was basically getting a window into how doctors were feeling about their jobs. Now, when the pandemic hit, the last thing you would expect was for doctors to have felt the pinch at that time, because you would think, well, they need healthcare workers, right? Yeah, they needed healthcare workers, but they weren't ready to pay them. Okay. Yeah. So at least not doctors. Okay. Yeah. But I had people reach out to me saying, my job just cut 25% of my salary just because. I had another doctor tell me, oh yeah, at my place, they held back 10% of our salaries just in case the hospital went down. I'm like, where else in the world do you have people working and arbitrarily would just get a 10%, not a pay cut, but a 10% withholding from the institution just in case? So that, when I say it fired me up, it fired me way up. And the way these things happen is like things happen and then they get stacked on each other. So at about the same time, I was expecting which baby was this now? Expecting my third baby. And I went to the OB one day and, she was doing an ultrasound, and then I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, that looks, I'm not an ultrasound pro, but that looks a little funny. So I see the ultrasound tech, like, just not say anything. And I'm like, And she walks out and brings back my OB, and they're both looking at the screen, and then they walk out, and I'm like, all right, what is this? Long story short, in a few minutes, I was in a conversation with a different OB, and he said, yeah, so, basically I'll see you in the OR on Wednesday. I'm like, wait, on Wednesday? I'm like, no, I'm on call on Thursday. He's like, no, you're not anymore. And it hit me that just like that, normal pregnancy at least felt normal. I didn't feel any weird. Went from we're working to you're in the OR, you're off work, and then we'll see what happens afterwards. And that was when I said, you know what? I've been talking a lot about financial freedom just as almost like a buzzword, right? But for physicians, particularly for female physicians of childbearing age, men as well, but just in that particular setting, for me that day, that was where my head was. I was like, alternate streams of income are not a luxury. They're not like, oh, this is nice, let's go get extra streams of income. They are a necessity. Like, if you're not thinking about what your other income streams are, you are absolutely neglecting your responsibility. Because in that moment, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, fine. I'm salaried. Yes, I have all the insurances. I had disability insurance. Life. We are like insured up the wazoo, right? But that day, I was like, but what if I wasn't? What if I was a locums person? Like, just like that, I was pulled from work. And so, yeah, long story short, I ended up being out of work for the next 9 months, which was amazing for other reasons. My daughter is doing fine. Thank God. She's now 2.5.
Awesome. Yep.
But during that period, when I talk about fired up, in that year, I was home, but I was of course still very much aware mentally, right? So that was when I scaled up my coaching stuff, because I was like, listen, the people that reached out to me trying to find those extra streams of income and saying that they wanted it stacked, even though I could not offer them something that could give them the money that they wanted stat, like right away, I needed to find a model that could help them do that. That's why I began this story. So during that period, I was like, what is there in real estate? Since my niche is real estate, what is there in real estate that a doctor could literally start today and in a couple of months have meaningful cash flow? And that led me to rental arbitrage at the time. Rental arbitrage basically being that instead of you buying your short-term rental, you lease the property from somebody else, turn it into a short-term rental. In 3 months, now, I was going to start it back in September when I was first pulled from work. That didn't work. I was still pregnant. So in March the next year, I started. And then by June, I had secured 10 rentals, 10 apartments that I turned into short-term rentals. That was how short-term rentals came into our lives. We'll fast forward, by October, hosted a conference where I was now interviewing other doctors that had short-term rentals. And then I started hearing about the tax advantages of actually owning the short-term rental. But now, having had the experience of owning just the more like economy, apartment style short-term rentals, I was like, yes, this is nice for cash flow, and this can give you fast cash flow. But in my case, I didn't necessarily need as much fast cash flow from the apartments. My own personal goals meant that I needed the tax savings as well as the long-term asset accumulation. And that was how I ended up with luxury short-term rentals. Yeah.
So this luxury short-term piece, when you're talking about tax advantages, not only just the straight line depreciation, are you tracking your real estate professional hours, your reps hours, so you can offset your active income with your passive losses?
Yeah. So that is the main attraction. And the thing about short-term rentals, for those who haven't heard about the tax advantages, it's that if you're buying just rental property, okay, traditional long-term rentals, at tax time, you get something called depreciation, which is basically a tax write-off based on simply the value of the property divided by a certain number of years, depending on the property type. There are ways to make that a bigger number called like bonus depreciation. But if it's traditional rental property with regular long-term tenants, the thing there is that it's considered passive income. And there's a saying that, passive losses offset only passive income. So if you have any kind of depreciation from traditional rentals, the only thing it can offset will be your passive income, which will be either the rental property income or anything else. But with short-term rent, now the way to kind of avoid that is to become a real estate professional, which has a number of stipulations, including, 750 hours of material participation, that and spending more time in real estate than anything else. So if you're a physician working full time, that statement alone rules you out, because there is no way you can prove to a tax, to a tax court, whatever, that you spent more time on real estate when you're working a full-time job. Now, with short-term rentals, on the other hand, you don't have to qualify as a real estate professional and meet all those things, because there is a different aspect of the tax code that can benefit you. And basically what happens there is that, first thing, is the property rented for an average of 7 days or less? And if the answer is yes, then you can move on to the next part. Okay, so first thing, that first part must be met. So those doing midterm rentals don't qualify for this, okay? So 7 days or less, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is your material participation. And in this case, there are a few tests that are used different from the test for real estate professional status. The first one is, have you spent 100 hours and more than anybody else? So for this particular test, you would need to both track your hours as well as track the hours of everybody else that works on the property. The second option there is, are you spending 500 hours on your properties? And you can group properties on this. So those are the two common ones. And a third one is, are you doing all the work on the property? But for doctors and high earners, the first two are the more common tests that people kind of go for. And if you can meet either of these, so say you buy a property like in Q4, for example, you buy the property in October, you spend 100 hours on the property between October and December, you get, a couple of guests in, and they stay an average of 7 days or less. You have now met the criteria to have that property be kind of classed as a short-term rental. And now you can take a huge chunk. So just for number's sake, for those who are listening, say you buy the property for $500,000, okay? Depreciation wouldn't include the value of the land. So just for ease of numbers, you would take off the land value. So let's say $50,000. So now you're left with $450,000. You would have an engineer do what's called a cost segregation study. And by the time they come in, they may be able to come up with, let's say, about a third of that $450,000, which is somewhere around $150,000 that can be used to offset your income, your active income in this case, if you have met those criteria that I mentioned. So now you have $150,000 deducted from your taxable income. Depending on your tax bracket, that could mean a savings of somewhere close to $50,000 for most doctors in this case. So you could effectively get back in tax savings your down payment on that property, because with a short-term rental, you don't have to put down 25%. For me, that was like the mind-blowing thing, because you can do a 10% second home loan. So you basically, for this same $500K property, you can put down $50,000 plus your closing costs and furnishing costs, just for ease of math, right? Mm-hmm. But you put down $50K as a down payment and get it out on the other end in tax savings. You could effectively just rinse and repeat. And that's just how you build your portfolio over time.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I know that you are not a certified public accountant or a tax attorney. I am also not a
Thanks for saying that.
public accountant or a tax attorney, but I'm also an investor who utilizes these to our advantage. So I just want to echo everything you said there is right on. And I really appreciate you extrapolating all of those little pieces and putting them in and really breaking it down. And I love how you tied in the cost seg to accelerate that depreciation.
Yes.
And it's just an awesome way. I don't know if it like to geek out is the word, but it gives me goosebumps to think about those kind of things. And I remember sitting when I first learned about the arbitrage of charging rent versus having a mortgage payment. And like, that's that same kind of feeling that I got. And it's like, that's it right there. And so many physicians can benefit from this. Now, granted, it's not sunshine and rainbows. It's difficult. It's tough. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of tracking. I tell everybody, track everything and track often, especially if you're tracking other people's part in the process too, but there's systems, there's processes, there's integrations, there's automations, there's so many things that we can use to grow our business of investing as opposed to creating a second job for ourselves.
Correct.
So that's really exciting stuff. And I can tell just from listening to you that you're really putting this into effect. And I love that you're sharing it with other people.
Oh yeah. When I learned about it, so When I did the rental arbitrage, I was like a town crier. Everywhere you saw me, I was talking about rental arbitrage. And then I hosted a conference where I then interviewed a number of people who own their properties. And I was like, wait a minute, why aren't you guys screaming about this stuff? Like, why am I hearing this on me asking you questions? You should have been like, and I went, yeah. I just started talking a lot about it, in our spaces. Cause I'm like, we've already made the money, right? And just by allocating it to certain things that will be assets that will ultimately, hopefully grow in value, you can recoup that money back. And now instead of, taking extra call or doing all these other extra things, even just start by saving the one you've already made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And investing that money into other investments. And then it's just going to keep compounding and compounding. So getting there. And I speak with a lot of physicians too. And I hear a lot, like, I want almost like there's this idea like there's an easy button. Like, I want to do this and 3 months later, I won't have to work anymore. It's like, I'm sorry, unless you're working with millions of dollars and you want this much money. And for the listeners, I'm squeezing my hands together.
Yep.
Then it's not going to be probably not going to be a good fit for you, right? Because what you make fast, you can lose fast, right? And what you build steadily and consistently, that stays for a long time. Yes. So just, I just encourage everybody that, to be patient along the way, because it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of mistakes to be made. And the more that you reach out and connect and build your associations, the less likely you are to make your own mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes, right?
Yep.
So this SavvyDocs in real estate, tell us a little bit about the mission for SavvyDocs and how is that helping other physicians?
So I decided to start SavvyDocs. Again, I had spent a lot of time on the forums, again, and shout out to Bigger Pockets. And, that has been, it has helped a lot of investors get started and all of that. But I remember that while I was on there, I would see a lot of people post things like, if you're trying to raise capital, well, talk to your doctor friends, because they have money that they don't know what they're using it for. And I remember thinking to myself, well, these doctors, can't they just do it then? I mean, like, can't they just, and then, add on to that, being on Facebook groups and then seeing the kind of questions that people were asking, like, all right, so there is a need. And so our mission there really has been to help doctors, make savvy financial decisions when it comes to real estate investing. Now, if I were to give you my full vision, I mean, it is literally creating mogul physicians, like for physicians to be at the helm of different investing spheres where previously they had only been passive investors. That is for them to be the ones controlling those deals, and they can still have their own passive investors invest in their deals, but physician led. That is my vision. That is my picture, that, that doctors will basically be the ones controlling the deals that previously they were only passive investors in. That's my mission.
I love that. And my journey. So my background, like I said, I'm not a physician. My background is construction management, engineering, architectural engineering, and the real estate piece. Fixing and flipping was our thing. At one point, we were doing 6 of them at a time. And It was just, that was full time for me. That was my world. And kind of how I bumped into physicians, I was debt relationships with physicians, and the same way we always heard, how can I get these deals? How can I get in this deal? How can I get equity? And that's how, for me, my company was created, Physician Wealth Systems. But the difference maker, exactly what you're saying there, is the difference maker for that company is we're creating turnkey real estate investment businesses. So the physicians have complete control of these assets. I'm not just,
love it,
having these turnkey investments where you're basically going to create another job. You maybe even create another miserable memory where I don't want to do this. I don't want to chase rent. I don't want to fix toilets. I don't want you to do that either.
Right.
I don't even want you to do some of the things that I feel like I have to do as an investor, but it's that same way that it's possible. You just have to ask yourself the right questions. You have to remove the limiting beliefs. You have to surround yourself with the right people who do want to share those things. That controlling assets is really, really important. Yeah.
And, when I say this, I don't want anybody listening to think that people who bring them deals are bad in any way. No. People who sponsor deals, at least not all of them, obviously, because it's human beings, right? So there will be some bad players, but there is value in deal sponsors. There is value in people, that have turnkey companies like yours, right? Who, can actually take all the dirty work away from doctors who are busy. But for me, my thing was do it, but do it from an educated standpoint, that, like right now, okay, a number of our long-term rentals, if you came to me as a buyer right now, I will sell them to you. Okay, because we've had issues with property management here in Syracuse. I don't want to do any of that long-term rental. Very different from short-term rental, by the way.
Yep.
Management, right? So if somebody like you came and were like, you know what, I have a turnkey, whatever, I'll take this off your hands. I'll manage it all. I'll be like, please. Right? Yeah. So there is value in that, but I like it when we get into the conversation and I'm talking with you, not as an quote unquote, and pardon my English, like an idiot. Okay. Yeah. But I'm talking to you from an educated standpoint that I can say, okay, what's my cash on cash expectation on this? If I came up to you right now and said, Brett, what's my cash on cash expectation? You understand that, okay, at least I have some idea of even the word cash on cash, right? As against saying, hey, Brett, I like to make, $2 million by next month. You know from the get-go that this person has zero clue.
Yeah. So there's so many pieces, in my mind and my experience too, each one of those things you lay out there, I'm breaking down each instance and, okay, cash on cash return. Are we going to do straight cash purchase? Are we looking at finance? What's the way of those returns, which are crazy right now with the way the money market is. Yeah, and right. Then, no matter what it is, in order to make $2 million, you're going to be playing with a lot of money in order to make $2 million. And
the thing is, everybody. So I don't know if I should have used that exact word because it really does not reflect how I think about people who are getting started. No. But I feel that at the end of the day, people like you who are out there educating the audience, giving them opportunities to learn, are so helpful to our community, because that way, by the time, imagine if somebody came to invest with you right now, after having heard this interview, now they know to ask you, oh, so are there any tax advantages that I could expect? And now they can, talk with you at that, some kind of an educated, like basically have an educated conversation with you, if that makes sense. I hope it makes sense.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yes. No, sharing. And that's the thing about expanding associations. And for the physicians listening right now, don't be afraid to get out of the doctor circle.
Yes.
To make sure that you're bumping shoulders and having conversations with people outside of your circles. That's where you start expanding your knowledge and expanding your opportunities. And just back on the investing piece, everybody's got their own journey. I say that so much. And it may be just in syndications as a limited partner. Hopefully that seed of curiosity has been planted, so you're learning the process along the way. Even for me, I still love deals that make sense where all I got to do is provide money. Well, you do? Absolutely, I will do it. So we do a private lending. We actually do private lending out of our Roth IRA. We own short-term rentals in our Roth IRA. We're looking to acquire long-term rentals in our Roth IRA. But it's just there's so many different journeys and opportunities. It all starts with the knowledge. And even before the knowledge, you have to be curious. You have to have this want or the desire, because what you're talking about, when somebody comes in and has unrealistic expectations, it will soon cast a shadow over you in your progression moving forward. Because if I come out thinking I'm going to hit a home run every time I step up at the plate, and all of a sudden this pitcher is throwing heat, throwing these fastballs that I can't even catch up to, I'm just going to get depressed, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts with curiosity, and then just that knowledge. And just like in real estate with opportunities, there's an abundance. It may not feel like it. There's an abundance of opportunity. There's an abundance of knowledge. And there's also abundance of people out there who are willing to help you succeed at what you want to do.
That's very true. And I think one thing that I have seen in these spaces is that, like you said, there are lots of people who are willing and just love to share information. If you put yourself in the right, even just Facebook groups, mm-hmm. and ask the right questions, and not be afraid to ask the questions, ask questions about what you're doing, what you're thinking of, you get really far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what's one thing, if you were to look back 10 years ago, what's one thing that you would say to yourself 10 years ago?
So 10 years ago now will be 2013. Where was I 2013? Right about to start residency. I was like, girl, you have no idea what's coming. That's exactly what I'll say to myself.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Because, I mean, the amount of transformation that I have kind of undergone personally, as well as professionally since then, has been worlds away from where I was back then. 2013, I was still in residency, still fully focused on medicine. I knew I had an itch, which was, I know there's something else that I can be doing. Like, what is the other thing? What's the other thing? And I was praying, I was looking up ideas, I was talking to people because I knew there was something else. And when that something else finally showed up in 2014, which was real estate, I had no idea how far it would have gone. So I'll say to myself, I mean, knowing what I know now, I'll say, you're on the right track. Just do what you're doing. It's coming. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So not only in medicine, when the path kind of changed up there a little bit, but in real estate, in family, it sounds like all of these things, because I think one of the coolest things about the situation you're in or were in is that you had that curiosity, like the seed was planted, and you're proof of that. It starts with that thought, and we begin to think, and I'm certain that you started writing stuff down. So as we think, then we write, and then we create, right? So we make our own reality in that regard. So just echoing that, and you've done absolute great job. I love to hear the story. I love that you're sharing it with people. We thank you for your time today. It's been absolutely amazing. Chiagozie. I
Yes.
wanted to throw it one more time out there. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. So thank you for your time. And for the listeners, they can find you at SavvyDoctors.co. So it's SavvyDoctors.co. Don't put the M on there. It won't go. So don't put the M on there. SavvyDoctors.co. And they can actually reach out to you. They can connect directly with you, learn more about your story, and the things that you're sharing are remarkable. So everybody out there who's listening, even in residency, fellowship, attending, wherever you're at, if you've got this limiting belief where I don't have the time, I don't have the money, guess what? I'm going to say it right straight to you. Toughen up, get over it, because it is possible. How bad do you want it? If that seed of curiosity is in your head, it can be done. Would you echo that?
It can absolutely be done. And we have a ton of resources. If you go on that link that he shared, there's a link to our Facebook group. There's a link on the menu to our podcast as well. I mean, there's so much you can learn, even just out there. And like you said, once you have the curiosity, follow it. If you're listening to this, you're already in, actually, just so you know.
Yes. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good point. If you're here already. You're there. You're ready. So what's holding you back? And we've got other shows that we've talked about, like the limiting beliefs. So you can go back and find that episode too, how to remove the limiting beliefs, because you're here. You know, you've made the point. So thanks again for your time. I've absolutely loved our conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to the listeners out there, again, this is not possible without you guys downloading, ladies downloading and sharing. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out on the SavvyDoctors.co. You can email us directly at info@physicianwellsystems.com. Let us know what you think about the show. If you have suggestions, if you have things that you want to learn more about or guests that you want to hear, let us know, and our team will get after it and get everybody booked here on the show. And man, just thank you for your time and attention today. So until next time, the Real Estate Mogul MD, we'll catch you on the next download.